Hey, here we are on the show. It's the first day after Canada Day. It seems like a long weekend.
Canada Days.
Was that a long weekend?
What a Canada Days. It was fabulous.
I can't believe we're back here. I can't even believe it's as cool as it is in the studio because it's pretty hot out there. So that's good.
Well, it's
air conditioning.
hot on the outside, cool on the inside. It's perfect.
Yeah. So, well, let's welcome our first guest of the day, Vasanti Kea, joining us. And great to have you here, Vasanti. You are a tantric teacher, a sacred sexuality guy, and you guys know each other already.
Yeah,
which
yes.
is like it's a small town, right?
Well, you know, Toronto's 1 degree of separation from everyone, right? So, welcome, Vasanti.
Thank you.
So exciting to have you here. So, you mentioned previously during the pre-talk that you're a tantric coach, and I think, you know, tantra is a thing that people hear about, but they don't really know too much about what it is. So I was wondering if you could maybe just share a little bit around what the purpose of Tantra is.
Sure. Well, Tantra it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. It's not a religion. It's definitely not a cult, which a lot of, the Western paradigm.
Too bad, because I was really looking forward to joining some kind of a cult.
Tantric cult, right?
Any kind of cult.
Well, we're in a cult, culture, right?
Sure, we're in a culture.
Yeah.
So Tantra, it's a philosophy, it's a belief, and it's, in the West we like to hold on to these ideas of the taboo. So Tantra has been kind of given a reputation of being something very sexual, and it can include sexuality. Tantra is actually the only philosophy that reveres and celebrates sexual energy. A lot of other religions will tell you that the body is something that you have to transcend in order to get in touch with the divine or God or the universe, whereas Tantra actually brings that consciousness in and says, well, this body is all that we have in this life. We all come from sexual energy, we all feel sexual energy, so instead of denying it and suppressing it, let's celebrate it and see how we can use it and how we can harness it in ways that benefit and nourish us.
For sure. Sexual energy, there are two things that you get to experience all of your perceptions, your sensory perceptions, and what I've read is that it's sex and food, right? We do both of those things for pleasure, and pleasure taps you into all of your sensory awareness. And yeah, I agree with you that in our society, our sexuality, it seems like we're so challenged here. How does Tantra work as with you as a coach? How do you work to support people with the wisdom of Tantra?
Well, a lot of Tantra actually happens before the sex act. Again, the sex act gets a lot of the attention, but really the work happens before that. So, like you were mentioning, sensuality. Sensuality is often synonymous with the word sex or sexuality, and they're not. To be sensual simply means to live through the senses. So Tantra invites an expansion of sensory awareness. So this can be, reclaiming and retapping into our sense of smell, our sense of hearing, our sense of touch. These are simple things that we take for granted, but when we really attune with them, they're very powerful and can really expand our awareness.
And our connection to things.
Yeah,
I think that's something that we're so disconnected from is all of these other ways that we engage with our senses.
Yeah. Another huge pillar of Tantra is bringing a balance, first an awareness of, and then a balance to our masculine and feminine polarities within us. So regardless of your gender, of your sexual orientation, we all have within us a masculine and a feminine polarity. So first bringing awareness of how these different pieces of ourselves interact with the world, how we react to things, and then aiming to bring balance to them. So it's the classic yin and yang, light and dark, night and day, duality and polarity of our world.
So would you say then Tantra teaches the student how to become more physically engaged, like using their body sort of as a vessel for processing the energetic information?
Absolutely. So Tantra, again, it aims really to bring us inside the body. That we believe in Tantra that the body is what we have. It's the way we understand the world. It's all the pleasure, all the sensations we will experience come from our body. So the more in touch with ourselves, the better. It really invites us to come home to the wisdom of our body. We're so up in our head in our culture. We're taught to be logical and rational, and that's why the senses get put on the back burner because we simply aren't using them in the same way.
Now you mentioned before we came on, you were saying that the whole sex thing is a big wound, or, I mean, can you just express that? I mean, it's a very, well, charged subject,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
I don't know if that's just in the West or everywhere, but, you know.
Well, I think in the West we're actually quite lucky because we can talk about it. And for the first time, perhaps in history, women are really being heard, and men, of course, about their sexual wounds. In other places in the world, this is still not a conversation that can be brought
Right,
to the public or on the internet.
Yeah.
So we're actually quite lucky in the West that, you know, as we saw with the Me Too movement unfolding, the wound that our society is suffering from right now is a sexual wound. You know, objectification of women, the repression of men's emotions. There's just so many pieces to this puzzle. I really believe that through Tantra and through just consciousness of the sacred element of sexuality, sex doesn't have to be something taboo. It doesn't have to be something dirty or racy or raunchy. It can just be something nourishing and loving and quite sacred. And actually, there's so much healing that can be brought to the individual and to the world, just when we bring that awareness back to the sacred element of our sexuality. I really see my work less and less as just a Tantra teacher. I really see it as a form of social activism.
100%.
Because we're really coming into an age where we can finally talk about it. We can finally bring these issues up to the surface, and they're received. And, you know, we are looking for ways of integrating our sexuality into our society.
So you mentioned that you spent some time abroad, Vasanti. First off, like, where did you go, and was that to sort of support your training around this?
Sure. So I've been traveling around the world for 10 years, studying with different indigenous healers, taking many trainings and courses, and living in different eco-villages, living with different indigenous communities. And really I went on this journey in pursuit of, you know, I grew up here in Toronto, and I always felt a certain disconnection from nature, from each other. And I really went in search of that connection, you know, a bit of a spirit journey or a soul searching.
Wonderful.
And I kept, you know, running into the same wall, which was my sexual trauma, limiting me in ways, limiting me in my relationships, in my financial abundance, in the way I related to the world. So when I realized that it was in fact sexual trauma that was limiting me from moving forward, I started exploring it, and that brought me naturally to Tantra. And once I felt the freedom of Tantra that says, if you have wounds, if you have ecstatic bliss and laughter, it's the same. You know, it's just energy.
Yes.
Once I found that freedom, I found such healing in it. So I just kept studying and following and riding that wave.
I think that's so interesting what you said about it's the same energy as like pain or wounds, right? And you know, I'm into vibration medicine, and one of the things that we know is that a cat, when it's feeling pain or if it's feeling pleasure, it vibrates through purring as a resonance of 20 to 150 hertz. So it's a similar type of thing, that same energy that, you know, just, yeah, it's wonderful, this experience of Tantra. So, you know, let's say I'm your market. I'm your market, and
She needs some tantric help.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, as a woman, I grew up with my own challenges around, sexual trauma, mostly because, you know, again, identifying that I'm both male and female, and not having necessarily the best male role models, and then, you know, running into relations with the male gender. Sometimes, you know, it took me a long time to really figure out my own sexuality and, you know, my own traumas. So what as the market, you know, what would I need to do to, let's say if I wanted to be more engaged with Tantra, but then maybe even be like a coach myself, what kind of education does one need to go through?
Well, I mean, I think reading books on the topic. Going to study with some very experienced teachers is always useful. I have a list of books and podcasts and things like that I can refer you to. I really think all the education we ever need is right here in our own bodies.
So how do we participate then in community and more like learning around this stuff?
Sure. Well, I'm offering workshops, around 1 or 2 workshops a month. I do a lot of work specifically with women, specifically with men, and specifically with couples. I do see clients, couples, one-on-one as well. I really believe the first step of it is simply opening the door to our awareness. The word Tantra in Sanskrit translates, one of the translations is the expansion of consciousness.
Right.
So anything that we can do coming from our own body that expands our consciousness of self is tantric. So whether this means, smelling your food and really appreciating the colors before we just dive in and attack, or it can be taking a moment to really feel the texture of your clothing before you put it on. Just these little things that enrich us, enrich the senses, enrich our level of awareness.
And slow us down, right?
Slow us down so we can become the observer of our experience as opposed to just doing it and leading
Hamster,
from the head.
like,
Yeah, starting to lead from the heart.
Yeah. So take me through, would that be sort of the thing that, like, if I came to one of the workshops, would I be experiencing some of those things that you just mentioned, like, as part of the experiential component to the workshop? What do you do?
So a lot of my work comes from...
Right?
Yeah.
Of course.
I want to know.
Yeah.
We need details.
Yes. Bring it.
Absolutely. A lot of my work comes from actually deconditioning. So in order to start understanding these new concepts and new ways that we can approach our sexuality, it is important to, take the education we've been given and throw a lot of it out the window. Unfortunately, at least in my generation, most of us got our sexual education from pornography, which is the furthest thing from truth and the furthest thing from loving and compassionate. I do believe that the effects of pornography trickle much, much further out than the bedroom.
For sure.
Most pornography is violent, abusive, denigrating, painful, and fake.
Yeah.
Women don't typically come to orgasm in that way.
There's nothing going on. Don't worry about it.
So yes, women don't typically come to orgasm in the way that we are shown that they do. But if you're a 12-year-old boy or a 12-year-old girl and you think that's the way that it's done, of course you're going to go through your life perpetuating a way of approaching sex and sexuality that isn't necessarily loving or sweet or nourishing.
No kidding.
So a lot of it is actually identifying what's true and what isn't true. What resonates in a way that's loving and safe and sweet, and what's just been fed to us. If our sexual education comes from a religious background or from parents who didn't really know either,
Wow.
I mean, that's the whole thing because, people, it's like, what is the right way then to teach sexuality? I mean, even in Ontario, we've had the big controversy because the previous liberal government, I'm not sure exactly what they were doing, but they were bringing sex education to kids at a younger age than ever before. I'm not sure what it was. I know we started getting sex education, I think, in grade 7, way back when. But and there was a lot of people complaining about it. Yeah. Is it like, when is the right time? Who should be teaching it? What is the right way to teach it?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
It sounds like you might have some insights about this, but I think still we have so many wounds around sexuality that we don't even know how to talk about it.
Well, that's the thing. I personally believe there's no difference between our sexual education and our physical education. So, babies masturbate. It's one of the first things that we do, actually. The infant will place the hand on the genitals and recognize, oh, that feels nice.
Yeah, totally.
And why
100%,
not?
yeah.
So, the second we label sexuality as something taboo or something wrong, we want to ban it and take it away from children, naturally. But when we shift our paradigm and realize, oh, right, sexuality is as natural as food or plants or water. It's the same thing as nature. It's the same thing as creativity. Then we change and we want to start nourishing that connection.
So let me ask you, okay, so great point. So why is there so much of a charge around sexuality then? Like in the first place,
Yeah.
right? Something must have happened or something for, for parents to shame their kids for masturbating
Right.
when they're, I don't know, a kid,
Right.
right? And then that causes the whole shame thing to repeat, right?
Right.
Like, is there something about it that, I don't know.
Well, it goes back a long time.
Yeah.
And I think that, church and the religions
Yeah.
are the root cause of it. I
Yes.
think because it is just so powerful.
It's yes.
I believe the sheer power and the immensity of sexual life force is so threatening
It's
to
the root
institutions.
of your life force
Yeah.
energy, right? Like you're created through that interaction of like joining root energy together, and there's a lot of charge that goes with that. I think you totally bang on around religion being the major like disharmonizing piece to why we don't know so much about our sexuality.
Yeah, it's just
Shame is the lowest vibration that you can sort of vibrate at too. So having shame around that creative energy is so binding to like yucky outcomes. Yucky.
Yeah.
Like we've all seen. Like, I mean,
Exactly, and
yeah,
so
we're a witness to it.
when we have sexuality being shamed and being repressed in our society, that gives room for the kind of the black market, if you will, or the pornography. When things become demonized, it's a snowball effect, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And I think that's how we got to where we are today, where.
So what do you think is going to change at Vasanti? I mean, like in an ideal Vasanti Kea world, talk to me about what happens around like the shift that we need to experience in our sexuality.
Well, like you were talking about with the school system, I think children should be given holistic, sacred, conscious sexual education from kindergarten, from the moment they get into, an institution where there are other kids. Of course we should be given this education. I just think that our sexuality should be fostered in the same way that, we teach a child to play a musical instrument because that's nourishing for the brain. If we were to give a child the education of, yes, if you approach your own body with this level of reverence, this level of sacred love and respect for your own self, look at the effects it can bring to you.
Well, it taps you so much more into your creativity.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
One of the things I'm hearing is, and I totally agree with you, but I also know, there's no but. It's a train the trainer kind of thing that needs to happen. I think if we're looking at how to engage children in this process, we have to be first engaged in the process of like knowing our own kinks.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but my sex ed class in grade 8 or whatever, the woman teaching it to me was petrified and mortified of talking about. She didn't even refer to the genitals. She would say like the P word and the V word, and it's like, okay, then
Wow.
how are we supposed to approach sexuality as something sacred and important
And
when
beautiful.
words of the genitals the names of the genitals can't even be expressed? So
Yeah.
it's really coming back to the root of how does the teacher feel about his or her sexuality?
I mean, and how do you even manage that? I mean, say you're managing the educational system in Ontario, right? So, I mean, yeah, I totally get that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, not too dissimilar experience
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
I grew up in the Catholic school system, so you can just imagine.
I
Goodbye.
can't. Did you guys have sex ed?
Oh God! My whole my whole thing growing up, and my school was run by nuns.
Oh.
So it was just like the whole thing from day zero was all around sexual shame and body shame.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, come on, really? So, you grow up and you start to realize a few things, and it's like, wait a minute, that's like the most wazoo power ever if we just understood how to like control it, So anyways. Tap in the superpowers.
Well, how do you even manage it, though? If you're trying to manage an educational system, for example, like you're a teacher in grade 8, and then if they're trying to like bring it down to younger kids even, right? How do you even evaluate a teacher to make sure that they're... And then the whole thing is, who's going to agree with it even? I mean, we had so many protests here in Ontario.
I certainly have an answer to that. Vasanti, I'd love to know your answer, but I certainly have an answer to that. So, from a tantric perspective, how do you manage it?
Let the state raise all the children?
No, it's the teachers. The teachers taking responsibility, because if we talk about Tantra from a physical perspective, it's around owning your physiology, understanding the sexual energy as it moves through your body. And that's something that isn't taught as like a health education thing. It's not taught in schools, but the teachers need to learn it.
And my answer for that would be individual meditation.
There you go.
You know, we can't isolate anymore. We've understood our own psychology and our own reality as one. You know, if you understand the basics of quantum physics, we are really one. You know, Bob Marley said one love. He was really right about that. So we can't anymore isolate sexuality as a piece of the puzzle. It's the whole thing. So if you're in this system, any system, if you're a nurse, if you're a veterinarian, whatever it is, we need to understand the role that sexuality plays in our entire being. So if the individual in that power or authority position isn't aware of their own body, isn't aware of the way that their sexuality flows, of course they can't really pass it on to a child. So the more we empower ourselves to come home to that consciousness, the easier it is to share that message, and it shares naturally.
So, I mean, for people watching right now, I mean, who are the people that should maybe consider getting in touch with you or coming to one of your workshops?
If if at any point in your life you felt disconnected or cut off from your sexuality, if you've been, experienced shame from a teacher, a parent, anything like this in your childhood, or adolescents that are now feeling that limits you in connecting with yourself or your partner, if you've suffered from any sexual trauma, if you're simply just looking for a more holistic, more nourishing way to approach your sex life, whether that be with a partner or with yourself, if you're really just looking to amp up your vibration, if you're looking to live your life in a yummier, juicier, more sparkly, alive way, that's what Tantra can offer you.
Okay. And what workshops do you have coming up this month?
So a very good friend, Clarity Bartlett, and I will be hosting an ecstatic dance for women. This is an intentional space for women to come into their sensuality through movement, and this is on July 27th. And I have workshops coming up all the time. I'm posting them on my website or on Facebook. If you'd like to get in touch with me, it's Vasanti Kea on Facebook, vasanti.kea on Instagram. And I'll be hosting a retreat for couples with my beloved in Dominican Republic in March.
Wonderful.
Oh, that sounds good, but we got to wait till next winter now.
March, yeah. Vasanti, this is a wonderful service that you're providing and teaching and engaging people in conversation around. Thank you.
I think it's really important. I really think it's the way home to the world that we dream of.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay.
Home to the self.
Thanks for coming in today. Great
Thank you so much.
for you guys to reconnect.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we're going to take a little break. We've got Julia Arbuckle coming from the Art of Living Foundation next here on thatchannel.com.
What?